Hey guys, hope you're doing well. In this video, we're going to talk about the top and best application vulnerability assessment solutions. Applications or web applications vulnerability assessment solutions are a very important part of any security design and architecture. It's very important that we regularly scan and assess the vulnerabilities in our applications and make sure they are patched and they're up to date, and there is really less risk involved with our application, because they are one of the most important part of any environment. There are different type of application security scanning or testing, and as you can see on the screen, SAST, DAST, and IAST basically are or YAST are the basically the scanning testing methods that we have. SAST, or static application security testing, is basically a type of testing that would look into the source code of the application. So obviously we need to have access to the source code of the application, and we would go through obviously the code and identify any possible vulnerability within the code. So if we have defined variables, obviously in a risky way, or if we have hard-coded passwords or hard-coded sensitive information, those are the ones that would be picked up by a SAST solution. DAST, or dynamic application security testing, on the other hand, is more like a real life scenario where remote attackers, they try to attack an application. They don't have access to the source code. They only see obviously the front end portion of the application, and they try to obviously find vulnerabilities and basically get into the application. So that will be done over the network, over the internet, and basically all you need is just potentially a URL for an application and start obviously scanning the application that way. Interactive application security testing, or YAST or IAST, basically is a combination of SAST and DAST altogether, right? And basically the way it works is it would put everything together: static testing, dynamic testing, and try to make sense of the results and try to minimize any possible false positives there, and try to obviously provide a complete meaningful report. So now let's talk about obviously how we choose the right application security testing program for us. And if we want to go through a vendor, what needs to be done really to pick the right vendor. So as you can see, there is a Magic Quadrant, which is pretty recent, April 2019, from Gartner, and they have, well, you can see the definition of SAST, DAST, YAST on the top, and basically if we go further down, you see the Magic Quadrant basically table, and you see some obviously leaders in there. You see some other vendors, Micro Focus, Synopsys, Vercode, Checkmarx, IBM, White Hat Security. So IBM used to be really on the top, and they kind of have changed. I'm not surprised about that. So that's that was predictable. You see Qualys there, Rapid7, and so on and so forth, right? There are other vendors in the market. Obviously, Gartner has done research on these ones, but there are other vendors in the market. So I'm by no means that these are the only providers. There are the ones that Gartner obviously have done review on those ones. The one note here is the Micro Focus is basically used to be called HP Fortify. If you're familiar with HP Fortify, is a HP product. Now they rebranded it and just built a new product, and they're trying to present it that way. So that's basically the HP product. So Veracode and Synopsys. So there are a lot of obviously reports and information in there. So if you want to go through each vendor's strengths and quotients, you can just read the report and understand what are the capabilities of each vendor and what they do. So we're not going to go through that too much. You can certainly look at that yourself. The other report is Forrester Wave. So this is a little bit older report, 2017. But if we go down and basically look at the vendors that they have evaluated. You see they've evaluated Vercode, Cast, Checkmarks, IBM, as I said, Micro Focus, and so on and so forth. So there are a few different vendors here. And if we look at their table, let me just make this a little bit larger. You see very similar report here as well. Some are missing, but very similar. So you see Micro Focus, Vercode, Synopsys, and so on and so forth. So this is obviously what the Forrester Wave looks like. A little bit about the market presence is in there as well. So in terms of, which one has a better market presence, you can see that Vercode, for example, has a good market presence compared to Synopsys, compared to Cast and Micro Focus, and so on and so forth. And obviously, the more you go to the right, the stronger in terms of a strategy, and the more you go to the top, stronger in terms of the offering. So that's what's important to know about the Forrester Wave report. And then they have the weighted score matrix as well. So if you want to obviously look at the details and the criteria individually for each product, you can go through these and understand obviously what Forrester rates each individual vendor in each individual criteria and category. So this is a really good thing to look into as well. And basically, these are the two reports that are available, and you could obviously look at the vendors that they are there. But the other important thing for selecting an application security scanning tool is that the goal for a lot of these web application scanning tools is to and when we're talking about the web application part of it, is to ensure that they can actually integrate with our WAF or web application firewalls solutions and basically provide some automated mitigations, right? So that's a very important one. So I'm just going to talk about two of the top leaders in the WAF area or application firewall area, Imperva and F5. The Imperva, you can basically look at their website and you can see there are some supported technologies, supported vendors like High-Tech Bridge, HP, IBM, Qualys, White Hat, Rapid7, Vercode. So these are basically the vendors that they support and they integrate with. The good thing is when you do a scan with any of these scanners, you can just basically feed the report and feed the output from that report to your web application firewall, which would be Imperva in this case. And basically they will do the virtual patching for you automatically, and they will try to obviously basically mitigate those vulnerabilities, which is pretty good in terms of automating a lot of those things. F5 also, they have obviously a little bit smaller list, but they still have, TrustWave, HP, Web Inspect, which is the Micro Focus thing now, IBM, Qualys, White Hat, and so on and so forth. So there are obviously different integrations. One good thing that you see normally with White Hat is there is really direct integration with with the provider, right? So with the F5 or with the Imperva, so there's API integration, which works pretty well. You just do the scan on White Hat, and the results would be imported into your web application firewall automatically. So that's a pretty neat feature. So with that said, we are just going to go through obviously the recommendation. So there are obviously as you saw on all reports, Synopsys was really the top leader and very strong. They are really good, but I can't really see any built-in integration with the WAF providers. So there has to be a little bit of caution there. So if that's what you want to do, Synopsys is probably not the right tool. It doesn't mean that you can't integrate it, because a lot of these WAF providers, they let you obviously to do some XML conversions and integrate anyway, but it would be a bit of a hassle. So it's if that's something you want to do, it's gotta be caution with selecting that as a partner, as a vendor. Um, these following ones, they are really leaders, and they work really good. And if you look at the reports, there are a lot of good things about them. And um, they integrate with Imperva and F5 ASM, which are probably the top two WAF vendors in the market. Um, Veracode, White Hat, and Micro Focus. So there is a little bit of concern, obviously, with Micro Focus after HP rebranding and changing everything. Fortify and Web Inspect and everything is under a different brand now. I don't know what would be really the situation there. It might be better, it might be the worse, and how it's going to change, obviously, the integration and work with all these other vendors. But if it was me, I would probably look at these two more closely. Veracode and White Hat, they are really good vendors in terms of application security, and then provide a lot of great capabilities and integration with things that we need. And yeah, I mean, they can obviously help you with all those, SAST, DAST, and yes, obviously scanning mechanisms. So with that said, I hope this has been useful for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.